Good morning, CLC.
Good morning.
Welcome to this morning and this day. Welcome to the love and light that surrounds you. If you feel so inclined, go ahead and take a nice, deep, cleansing breath in, breathing in the cool, calming oxygen. And as you release the breath, allow yourself to open up to the love and the light. Go ahead and take another nice, deep, cleansing breath in. And as you release this breath, allow your body to just relax in this moment. And allow your mind to be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself up to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand, and let my words act as your own for your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and receptive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words. I surrender. Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive. Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose. I now center upon that one very special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. Visualizing that idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept. Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release. Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This can be a friend, a family member, a teacher or mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in this room or even on this planet anymore. I turn to that image in my mind's eye and say, I'm grateful for the good in your life. Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically present in the room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence and gratitude in saying, I'm grateful for the good in your lives.
We're working in metaphor now, have been for a while. I frankly don't know when we're going to come up for air. We had the metaphor during the summer, we had the metaphor of water, as in the oceans and rivers and streams and, yes, storms. And we have had the metaphor of light, sunlight, moonlight, shadow. Today we have the metaphor of clothing, of vestments. And this is part of the Gnostic work that we're doing this month, looking back at the teachings, some of the teachings of the ancient Gnostics, some of the teachings of some of the ancient Gnostics, because they didn't all agree on things any more than religious scientists do. But they had a particular viewpoint of fullness, a pleroma of God as impossible to understand, impossible to wrap one's mind around, that I appreciate, frankly, because the God of my understanding is bigger than any explanation. In fact, I kind of like what St. Augustine said about God, and I'm not a fan of St. Augustine, because his theology was repugnant to me, but he got off a good line now and then. And that right there is a metaphor. Because there are people out there that you probably don't agree with at all in terms of their outlook in life, but every now and then they say something and it kind of clicks. And he said something that I think you'll find useful. He said, if there is anything in this life that you understand, it is not God. If there is anything in this, so if you say, well, I understand electricity, then it's not God. It's, well, okay, sure, it's an experience that God is having if God is infinite, but it's not the full metaphor. It's not the full explanation of God, because if it were, you could not understand it. You would have no place to put it. It is infinite, and we do not have an infinite containment system within ourselves for understanding these things. So there is a power that's often called, in our culture, a higher power. Why is it a higher power? Because it's not a lower power. Because it's not a sideways power. It's a higher power. It's a greater power than, again, we have a capacity to completely comprehend. So what do? We stand in awe of this power. Yes, we express this power, but we stand in awe of it. Now, the question comes up a lot of times, what does this power want from us? And we've talked about this a lot over the years, and recently too, about the will of God. Most of us raised in the Western culture have heard about the will of God for you. God has a plan for you. You'll see people on TV tell you this. God has a plan for you. And they make it sound like, they don't know what it is, but they'll tell you, you should go find out. But they'll make it sound like a very specific plan. And they will imply that you're not following it. So the power that has this plan for you, it's not real it's not real happy with you. It's not content with how you're doing your life until you find out about this plan and you fulfill it. Well, a lot of us aren't in a big hurry to find out what that plan is because we think it will inconvenience us. It will cause us some discomfort, so we kind of put it off. And we're exhorted, especially in the Christian tradition, to find out what this plan is and live this plan. Well, what I want to propose to you in this talk today is that we split the difference. That there is such a thing, but it's not what we thought, okay? It's not a real specific set of marching orders like you should leave your career and go learn some new trade, or that you should even change religions or philosophies or something. No, it's not quite that on point. It's more like a higher power has a plan for you, that you should know who you are. And what else is so is that this plan cannot be avoided, only postponed, only temporarily set on ice. This plan cannot be gotten around. We will know who we are. We will come to know who we are. Because the desire that the higher power has for us, and this is absolutely a Gnostic idea, is not a sentimental thing, any more than God's love for us is a sweet and sentimental thing. That God wants us to be happy, and God wants us to be pleasured, and God wants us to be wealthy and just relax and have this easy life. That's not the Gnostic idea at all. The Gnostic idea is that the universe is built to work, and you're part of that machine. You're part of that industry. You're part of that energy. You knowing who you are, me knowing who I am, makes each of us a more functional part of that process of integration and healing and wholeness. Does that make sense? Makes us a better person. Okay, so I'm going to bring in another layer of metaphor here, which is the story of the rag man. Have you ever heard the story of the rag man? This is something that goes around in Christian culture from time to time. And our amazing information team down front here is busy looking it up for you right now. But what I would ask you to do is not read the whole thing yet. It's kind of in the form of a poem, and don't read it yet. Let me say what I got to say, and then you go back and see if what I said makes sense. It connects to the ragman. The ragman story basically is this. The narrator of the tale says, I was walking through a part of town the other day where there's poverty and there's crime and there's misery, and I saw this guy. And he was young and healthy and strong, and he had a wagon that he was pushing filled with, well, I wasn't sure what it was filled, some kind of fabric, some kind of linen material in there. And I don't know why, but I got real interested in what he was doing, so I followed him around. And he went to people. Well, first he found this drunk who was lying in the gutter. And he went to the drunk, and the drunk looked up at him, bleary-eyed, through the haze and all, and met the gaze of this young man. And the young man said to him, let me trade new rags for your old rags. And he took from the man his shirt, which was stained and filthy, and gave him a nice new clean shirt to wear. And this is what the narrator is watching happen here. And the intoxicated man, he sat up, and suddenly it looked like his head was clear, and he had some confidence back, he had some self-respect back, and he got up and he went on about his life. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Let's see what happens next. So he follows the rag man again. And now here's a woman, and she's sitting on the curb, and she's collapsed in grief. She's got tears running down her face. She's sobbing and so on. and she's got a bow in her hair, and the ragman says, "Let me trade you that bow for something I have here in my cart." And the woman looks at him, and at first she's, "Who are you and what do you want?" But she meets his gaze. He's got this gaze, and she takes off the bow, and he digs in the cart, and he gives her something new, and she puts it in a kerchief, nice thing in her hair, and all of a sudden her tears have dried up and so on. And she feels better about herself, and she's got her self-possession back. He says, then the ragman turned a corner on the street and started to weep. And he had to sit down. And he was racked with sobs for a period of time till he was done. And then he got up and he went on his way. And he came to a person who was deathly ill. And he came to a person whose house had just burned down. And he came to a person who just lost their job. And he came to a person who had nothing wrong with them particularly, that was obvious, but they'd forgotten who they were. And they were sad and they were confused. And in each case, he traded them out an article of clothing or something about their person for something clean and new that he had in his cart. And at the end of the day, says the narrator, I followed him all over town doing this. It's the most amazing thing. But he's changed now. He's old. And he's sick. And he's grieving. It comes and goes, but it's there. And he feels like he has no purpose left in life. And I'm worried he's going to die. And sure enough, he did. And that was on a Friday. And on a Sunday, when I came back into that part of town, I was amazed to see that where his body had been lying on Friday, and I figured it had just been left there to rot, it was gone. And he was alive again. And I saw him bounding across the landscape at a distance with his cart doing his good work. He'd come back to life. That's the story of the ragman, and that's the story of the Christ. That's the story of the Christ. The Christ takes on the suffering. It's called vicarious atonement. Substitutionary suffering. Takes it on. That's part of the Christian mythos. When New Thought says that we are all the Christ, the child of the living God, does not intend entitlement, power, prestige, wealth, notoriety of any kind. When it says we are each the Christ, the child of the living God, it says that we are each the ragman. That we are each the one who goes around to the person who's suffering in some way and says, let me trade with you. Let me trade my good feeling for your pain. Let me trade my confidence for your unsureness. Let me trade whatever it is I've got so much of that I feel so strong with. Let me lay this on you and take away what you've got going wrong right now. And I can do that. And I might have to go have a good cry. I'll never forget the man who ordained me, the late Dr. George Brannon, who was a lion in this movement. He even kind of looked like my big white hair, lion-looking character. He'd been a Methodist minister for many years before he came into New Thought. When I knew him, I was in my late 20s. He was in his mid-80s. And he said, I got to spend some time with him, and it was invaluable to me to get to know this man and to get to know his professional ethic, as a minister. He said, so when I was a young minister, because he'd come into it in his 20s in the Methodist church, he said one of the first things I had to do was the funeral of a baby. And I met the family out at the cemetery. There was simply a graveside service. I don't wish to disturb you with what I'm about to tell you, but it's important because this is what we're all called to do in our own way. But he said, I met the family out at the cemetery, and they were obviously stricken. And he said, then I saw the little bitty coffin. And he said, I had to go away for a while. I had to go real far away, through the tombstones in the cemetery, to cry it out, because I couldn't let them see that. That's not what I was there for. But I had to do what I had to do. That's a Christ-like act right there. That's a ragman kind of thing that he did. See, he took on their pain. Did it relieve them entirely of it? No, but it helps to share. It helps to share. We can never really get in each other's space so completely that we wipe the slate clean for what others are feeling. But God, to know that somebody knows on some level, that somebody cares on some level, that somebody's willing to sit with you on some level, kind of like Job's friends, only without the feedback, you know, to be there in that way. That's what we're all called to do. So the Gnostics talk about the unsentimentality of God, and they'll say this is the hard side of being a divine creation, is that it's going to push you to be more and not less. It's going to want you to know who you are, not so that you can simply sit there with that knowledge and feel good about yourself, but so that that knowledge can be put into action for the benefit of the world. I was talking to some people recently who just became religious science practitioners, because it was licensing season in May, you know. And I knew these are from other centers, these folks. They've been in some classes, and I knew some of them, when they weren't sure that's what they wanted to do, they were just like taking class after class, and it was all piling up certificates. And then the question came, is this what you want to have all this mean, you know? And the few I was three in particular I was talking to, went into being practitioners and got an amazing surprise, which is, as soon as you make the determination, set the intention, declare the process that you are going to do this thing, the lag time between treatment and demonstration collapses to nothing. You speak your word. You don't even have to speak your word. You think about speaking your word. Your word crosses your mind. And suddenly it's like a power tool or something. It's like I was talking to a neighbor the other day. He said, I have a power washer that I loaned to a friend, but I forgot to tell my friend to be careful with it. So he turned it on, and it blew him across the street. Well, that's the power of the word. And we, when you declare that I am someone who wields the word for the benefit of all humankind, you better strap yourself in, because this power working through you is going to launch you into space. That's how it is. When you say, as we've talked about constantly here, when you say to the night air, when you say to the presence of whatever this higher power is to you, God, show me who I am. Show me what I must do. Show me a life's path, and so forth. You better get ready, because it's going to do that. It's going to do that, and it's going to present to you the opportunity to know that. A wonderful line I quote all the time for you from Emma Curtis Hopkins, the fabulous Emma Curtis Hopkins. She was asked by a student, is there anyone I cannot heal? Someone who was becoming a practitioner under her tutelage, is there anyone I cannot heal? And Ms. Hopkins said, if there is, they will not come to you. If there's anyone you cannot heal, they will not come to you. Your time is too great to be wasted. Their time is too great to be wasted. They will go to someone else. And that implies necessarily that if they do come to you, then you have something for them. Then you are a channel of healing for them. You have something to offer. So the great metaphor of the clothing of this is that we're all clad in form. Holmes talks about this. We're all clothed in form. We're clothed in a body. We live in time and space. The Gnostics believe that we come into temporality out of eternity. We come into time out of eternity. To tear off our old rags means to tear off our old self-image, the old opinions of who we were as not just less than, but part of, but kind of a side note to life, that we are one with God is not a matter of being stapled to God or glued to God or just kind of an afterthought of God. It means that the whole power of creation is present right where we are for our use, for the benefit of all humankind, for all life everywhere. Tomorrow is Indigenous Peoples Day, and the indigenous people of this earth knew this better than anyone. It's why you read constantly in this science that we are regaining something, we are relearning something, we are unlearning some things. We're unlearning all of this modern stuff about where science and religion must be entirely separate things, where everything is about profit, where everything is about the accumulation of power, where everything is about leisure. We're unlearning what civilization means. Civilization is compassion. Civilization is not institutions. It's not buildings. It's not money. Civilization is we take better care of each other. That's a civilized society. And so we're returning to these ideas. And we take off the vestments of power. We take off this and we trade it in with the rag man. And we say, give me something simple to wear. I don't need to impress anybody today. I need room to move. I need the ability to flex my muscles to lift the fall. And I need the ability to withstand the weather, so as to be of optimum use to spirit. Relieve me of anything I no longer need. This takes nerve. This takes nerve because we're afraid on some level that we're going to lose what we have, not get what we need. But we say to spirit, anything that gets in the way of my being fully alive, fully here, fully present, fully aware, let it go now. And then trust. And it's a measure of our trust. And if we're not willing to trust, we're not bad and wrong, we're just not there yet. We're not ready to make that kind of a statement. If we're not willing to trust, then we work on the small things. And we learn to trust in small ways, the way we learn to trust people in small ways. And so we build our trust. And that's why you'll hear us say constantly, start where you are with your spiritual mind treatment. Instead of treating for the whole world to change or your whole life to turn itself completely inside out, start with how about today's better than yesterday was? How about today you know a little bit more? How about today you have a little bit more courage, a little bit more strength, a little bit more resolve, and so on, and see what happens. You say, yeah, that worked. And then you build on it, and you build on it, and you build on it, and pretty soon it's like you never knew. How was it that Jesus... it was possible for him to say to Lazarus in the tomb, come out. He didn't have to go through a 5-step treatment or a 7-step treatment or some long declaration of stuff, whereas, why this is so. He says, come out. He didn't just get to that when we read this. That was years in the making. We've got a Bible class we're in week 3 of now on Monday nights, and we're talking about this or we will be talking about this in there. Where did he go? Everybody wants to know, where did he go in the 18 years? It wasn't a long cruise, okay? Where did he go in the 18 years? He was learning and trying stuff and probably failing at it and probably wondering, am I ever going to know? Am I ever going to have this really down? And then trying again and trying again before he could say, come out, before he could say to the palsied man, take up your bed and walk, without a long process of conviction of himself or the other, to just declare it as so and see it done. And then tell us, say to this mountain, remove. A mountain, for crying out loud. Say to this mountain, remove. How did he come to that? He talked to a lot of mountains. They had them there, you know, up and down the continent of Africa. They had these mountains, and he was out there. He started with hills, probably started with little bitty hills, maybe ant hills, you know. And he's saying, remove. Darn, it didn't work again. How did that go? Look to his teachers. Okay, you know, and so that's how we build our faith. So every day, spiritual practice, spiritual practice, spiritual practice. It is what it sounds like it is. It's practice. It's practice. It's practice for the show. It's practice for the big time. It's practice for the moment where you happen, where the palsied man, let's say, is your responsibility, is on your street corner, is outside your house. That's where now all of that practice will come together. And I may next week tell you a story. We're going to have a wonderful service next week. We're going to have poetry. And I may tell you a story, kind of take up pretty much the whole talk with a long story about this, how you cultivate spiritual practice, or maybe I'll wait a little next week after that or something. But anyway, in the week to come, what I invite us all to do, you're here for a high and holy purpose. It's more than what you have imagined in your wildest dreams it could be. It involves a cast of characters you have yet to meet. Some of them you know, but more are on their way. How do you know that? You're still here. They are showing up, and they are showing up, some of them as teachers, some of them as students, and some of them as people you can't categorize as one or the other. They're a little bit of both, you know. And all of this is leading someplace, and you can't see around that corner just yet, but guess what? You never could. And there's no teaching worth its salt that will tell you honestly that you can know what comes tomorrow, except at the feeling level. That you know that you're getting ready for something, and that something is bound to happen. Something is bound to happen that exquisitely involves you, depends on you. And that makes you very special. And it also makes you very ordinary. It also makes you the same as everybody else, all doing the same thing. So the next time you see somebody, or I see somebody, who looks like they're kind of, dare I say it, useless. They're kind of, I don't know, miscellaneous. They're sort of just standing there in the way. Don't you hate it when people just stand there in the way? That's our judgment of them, and what's really going on is that they're preparing for a high and holy purpose that we cannot understand, and so we need to acknowledge that and just tip our hat to them and keep going. Let's know together now, there is one life, one power, one presence, pure spirit, everywhere, radiant, everywhere, manifesting. This one is mighty to heal, mighty to uplift, mighty to strengthen. I affirm and know for myself and each one within the sound of my voice that everything necessary for us to be agents of healing on behalf of Spirit is now provided. And anything that would impede that in any way is now easily and gently resolved and dissolved back into pure potential. There's now purpose, meaning, order, intention. There's now artistry, creativity. There is now boundless love, limitless compassion, and deep understanding present within each of us to heal this world one heart at a time. For this knowing and its manifestation in form, everywhere we turn, I am so deeply grateful. I release this word now into the infinite, calling it done, and so it is.
You know, I thought I'd been really clever today. before the service, I was talking to one of our members, Natalie. We were talking about AI, ChatGPT, and so on. So I thought I would use the summary of the messages on my phone for Reverend Jesse's weekly email. This is what it gave me. It was not brilliant. It said, this is the summary. An infinitely radiant universe talk continues on Sundays at 11 Central Time. Join the online watch party on Zoom using the passcode LOVE, all lowercase. Various ongoing interactions, including book studies, support groups, and discussions, are also available. And that was it. Well, since I'm an engineer, I guess that's the engineer's version of it. We also have somebody here who really I should introduce, yeah? Is it okay? Well, okay. Tracy Brown is here. She is a former leader of Centers for Spiritual Living, and also she attempted, I don't know if she actually succeeded, to teach diversity and inclusion to Reverend Lisa and myself when we were in ministerial studies. I think some of it rubbed it off. You know, I really do. Oh, and I also want to mention one other thing. Reverend Jesse mentioned Indigenous Peoples Day. Quite a few years ago, before the discovery of DNA, there was a group of scientists down from here, went down to the Amazon, and they were studying the shamans down there. And the shamans told them that they were actually communicating with the plants, and that they actually saw people of white, people of light in the plants. But they also described something else that they saw in the plants. And what they described turned out to be the structure of DNA. And this is way before it was discovered. So that just shows you that everything is connected and we're all interconnected. So now please take your gift in your hand. If you're online, you can donate through the link that's been put there a couple of times today. And please say with me, divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is.
It's one of those times.
Tangled web we weave.
One of those times that I wish I learned to dance.
Don't touch. Don't touch. I got you.
The humidity's a little higher today. It's not too bad. I've only shocked myself twice, I think. They were little shocks, not big ones. As opposed to the other day when I shocked myself loud enough for a customer to hear it and saw the spark. Yeah. Okay. So my responsibilities, since David outed Tracy, your class was one of my favorites. I loved your class. I still have those books. Oh, yeah. And I bought several more since then. So, she had us buy a compendium of stories that was this thick, and it is the best book ever if you want to read stories from different people. And right now I can't remember the name of it, and as soon as I do, I'll tell Danielle. Or I'll go home and find it and put it in the chat myself. So.
Dana found the book.
Oh. Okay. Well, Dana told. See, all I had to do was mention it, and somebody will do it. I love it. So, my last responsibility is to treat you out into the world. And I'm gonna step into the sacred with this saying, which is one that I repeat to myself frequently, that a master has failed more times than an apprentice has even tried. And anytime I am, tripping over myself, that's what I tell myself. A master has failed more times than I have even tried. So I'm going to get up, dust myself off, and try again. So it's all sacred all the time. As Reverend Jesse said, we are here for a high and holy purpose. It's a reminder that it is all sacred all the time. What we do in treatment is to consciously enter into that sacred, to consciously unify with that sacred, to remember who we are. all of the time. So step with me now into that consciousness of knowing that there is one power, there is one presence, there is one life, there is one love. I live that life. I am a vessel for that presence. I am a channel for that love. I am a channel for that power. Just as I know that each and every one of you is. When we remember who we are, amazing things happen. So I'm knowing as we walk forward into this week that we remember who we are, that we look into each other's eyes and we see that divine presence looking back at us. That as we reach our hand out to grasp another, we know that we are grabbing the hand of the divine. And that amazing things will happen. I speak my word for the people in Florida. I speak my word for the people in Georgia. I speak my word for the people in North and South Carolina. Resources are on their way. Help is on their way. That electricians should be called Power Rangers, because they are. That the system is working, because we are the system. And the system runs on love, by love, with love. And so I know this with all of the gratitude in my being. I speak my word knowing that it cannot return to me void. And I am grateful for the teaching that teaches me who I am. I am grateful for the community that comes together to remind each other of that fact every time. I am grateful for our practitioners, our ministers, our musicians, our visitors. I am grateful for each and every one of you. I am grateful for the technology that allows us to send this out everywhere. And I am grateful because it's just another word for love. And so I release my word into law with love, calling it done, and so it is.
Say with me now, something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my
I
body.
feel it in my mind.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in everything I am.
I feel it in everything I am.
I choose it.
I choose it.
I trust it.
I trust
I
it.
use it.
I use
And
it.
I love it.
And I love
And
it.
so it is.
And so it is. Thank you.